That's right. It's Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this side of the program. I'm Ini John Mekwa, and we start as usual with what's going on in the global space. Always good to start from the macro before you head to the micro. Oil prices jumped on Friday as reports that Israel had attacked Iran world market and sparked concerns that Middle East oil supply could be disrupted. And you know, this is not new retaliation to what Israel did in Iran. And so let's look at the numbers right there. We see that even though we had been very close to 100, we're now up to $88.51 a barrel. But that's after oil prices. That's Brent had gained 1.61% and WTI had gained 1.68% at $83.48 a barrel. So of course, Israel launching that attack on Iran is a major factor. That's the latest on that exchange between the two countries that threatens to drag the region deeper into conflict. Iranian media, however, reported explosions, but an Iranian official said that they were caused by air defense systems. So you see a lot of contradiction right there. Well, other matters affecting oil prices this morning. Global crude oil supply. Venezuela lost a key U.S. license, allowing the OPEC member to export oil to markets globally. Also, the U.S. has announced sanctions on Iran, and we know how powerful Iran is when it comes to contributing to oil supply. Another OPEC member targeting its unmanned aerial vehicle after the country's drone attack on Israel. The sanctions on Iran, however, excludes oil industry. But of course, we know sentiments around all of that could affect prices. Now we come to Washington, where the International Monetary Fund has projected a slight increase in Nigeria's debt to GDP ratio, which is expected to reach 46.6% this year from 46.3% last year. The IMF, which made this known during the meetings, are still ongoing. I think major conversations will end tomorrow, Saturday. They said that the rise suggests increased borrowing potentially for infrastructure and social programs or to counter economic shocks, while concerns arise about fiscal sustainability. The report indicates that Nigeria's debt remains manageable when compared to other countries. And so perhaps a little bit of comfort, but I guess we shouldn't relax too much. Now let's look at how the Naira is doing. Are the good days over? I don't know, and I don't want to say that. Yesterday, Thursday, NAFIX weekend by 9 Naira 99 kobo. That's it. The Naira lost. And this is the third day, I believe, that the Naira is losing this week. It was down 7.58%. On NAFEM, it closed at 1,154 Naira 8 kobo. And then it opened at 1,072 Naira 74 kobo. And then for NAFEX, closed at 1,138 Naira and 82 kobo, even though it's open. So we see the Naira dropping, and we've seen this since the concerns about the reserve. Do we see that the reserve is depleting because of the defense of the Naira? We had the CBN governor at Washington say, well, there are other income that have been coming from FX. We have the income from diaspora and all of that. And remember that the government has been very active in the financial market, in the money market. We've seen bonds auctions almost every week, oversubscribed with good rates. So the CBN governor is trying to calm nerves to say, oh, it's not about the reserve, but I mean, we've seen the Naira depreciating, in this coming days, unfortunately. And now let's move over to all right, so let's just take a quick conversation on all of this. LCCI has been talking about this, especially that single window platform that the federal government also introduced. We have the president, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Gabriel Dahosa, joins us virtually from Abuja. Mr. Dahosa, good morning.
Morning.
Great. Good to see you. I mean, I was afraid we're not going to have you. So you had a press conference yesterday. You're talking about some of the reforms that the government has introduced. Could you share with us your thoughts?
Well, essentially, we looked at the various reforms and we saw how they were panning out, and we commended the government that some of the reforms are beginning to show results. Public transportation it's now improving in terms of costs because of the CNG buses that are now running on the road. And we expected that a lot more of that will bring down the cost of transportation, which will translate into lowering the food inflation, because a huge component of food inflation is transportation along the value chain from the farm to the dinner table. We also recognize that the foreign exchange management has improved significantly after the unification of all the rates, and we thought government was doing well on that. But of course, the big one that we think a lot of work still needs to be done is on security, because security affects all the other sectors of the economy. And we thought that a lot more needs to be done. On power, we thought, as the rest of the observers of the economy have mentioned for several years, that government needed to bring private investment into transmission, because it's the transmission that seems to be dragging both generating and distribution down. Generation is up to about 13, 14 megawatts, gigawatts, and then distribution is doing well in most parts of the country, but transmission, we still have collapse of the grid from time to time. So these are some of the things we thought government should look at, and we hope that in the course of the next few months, we begin to see some improvement, especially on the back of two major improvements that we have seen: the local production of petroleum products from Dangote, Nigerian flights to the US, to the UK. Those two major events, which we mentioned in our report, are strategic enterprises that have a very long value chain affecting almost the whole of the economy. And we thought that the government should identify these strategic enterprises like Dangote, like the airlines, and give them all the support, customized support, to ensure, for example, that we have our airlines using all our bilateral services, which means that in the UK, for example, we still have 14 flights. We need to get 21 flights, like the foreign airlines are flying to Nigeria from the UK. So we believe that government should identify those critical enterprises that require additional support, around which there's a lot of value chain. If the refinery one is very clearly very long value chain. In the airline business, if we have more of our airlines flying to foreign countries, we save foreign currency from the ticket sales, and we earn foreign currency from ticket sales they make in the other countries. So this is a summary of the press conference, identifying areas where the government has done significantly well and areas where we think there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, and you were also concerned about the national single window for the exporters and importers, and you did make some suggestions on how you think it can be implemented for a more robust impact.
Yes, it's very early in the day. That just announced barely 24 hours before we had that quarterly conference, and we had said that in most of these major government policies and activities, that the active players involved, the exporters, in this case the importers, have to be parts of the process. Because if they are not part of the process of design and implementation, it is after the fact that we begin to see a lot of corrections and amendments that you need to make. For a good example is the student loan situation, where we had to make another law to correct a lot of aspects that were not foreseen in the initial design of student loan. So we are saying, again, for this single window, the active players around this new policy should be embedded in the implementation before it is 100% rolled out, so that we can avoid easily foreseeable issues and not wait until we are running it full steam and then we have to take a break and correct them. That's essentially the essence of our opinion on what is a very another great innovation by government. But the process of implementation will be faster and better if the core players are integrated at this time, before it becomes a full-blown program.
Yeah, so I hope you're having conversations with the government because now there's a steering committee. I honestly do not know those who make up that committee. But I mean, I hope you're having conversations such as this so that, these elements are infused at these early days.
We can say that for this government, both at the federal and state level, we are actively engaged in a lot of conversations. Almost every week we are involved, and apart from the mentioned the press conference yesterday, we are directly involved with the agencies concerned. And to be fair to government, they also let us know and call us to have these conversations. And yes, there's a lot of conversations going on before the full rollout. And we believe that some of the gray areas will be resolved in the next days or weeks before we see a full implementation of the program.
All right. Thank you so much, President, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Gabriel Dahosa, for your time and thoughts this morning.
Thank you.
Well, one of those areas that Mr. Dahosa talked about is the Dangote, talking about energy, security. We did have this conversation on Business Incorporated yesterday with an executive from Dangote, but let's look at it from the economics perspective now with the Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company, Mr. Bismarck Rwani. Mr. Rwani joins us in the studio. Mr. Rwani, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for your time coming into the studio. We appreciate that. So, of course, consumers or Nigerians are being pushed on many sides. Yesterday, we talked about the possibility of telecoms. They are hinting us that they might, implement their own hike also of tariff. But at least we have one sucker coming from Dangote. And so we see Dangote telling us that diesel is not even going to be the 1,225, they said. It's not going to be 1,000. So, of course, this gives us a little bit of relief as Nigerians. Yeah. Even though we wonder how long it will take for this to sip down into real commodity prices.
Thank you. I think, as you can say and see, the point is that what's the almighty power of diesel? Why diesel? Diesel is so important, right? In the fractional distillation column of the refinery.
So the almighty power of diesel.
Yes. You can see the price is down from 1,700, which it was last year, to 1,000 Naira. This is big, right? But it's not just, why diesel? We talk about petrol, we talk about this. Diesel is very...
Petrol seems to be the most popular in the petroleum products in Nigeria.
In Nigeria, but that is not the truth. The truth is that diesel is used for powering trucks across different parts of the country. It is used for your generators, right? It is used for thermal production of cement in furnaces, and it is so significant, right, in the process. And you will see as we go along what is the impact of a reduction of this magnitude in diesel, especially the price of diesel when it was 1,700. The global price of oil was 75. Today, the global price of oil 88, and yet the price. So there's that inverse relationship now, and that tells you that if the price of oil was at 74, which it was 6 months ago, then you would have been seeing diesel at 800 Naira a liter. So,
but I'd like to ask, we don't have price control in Nigeria. So Dangote is selling at 1,000 Naira. Obviously, the retailers, those who will buy from him, are going to do markup for their logistics, for their profits and all of that. Is there anything to stop them from still exploiting consumers?
No, there is, because the supply. Dangote has capacity for 650,000 barrels a day. If you store it, basically if you want to speculate and hoard diesel, you spend so much time. You spend a lot of money for hoarding, right? So it doesn't work that way, because the cost of storing it become much more than your margin you make, and you'll be speculating. So if you speculate that the price of oil is going to go back up, and then you're storing it, no, you're going to lose. And you can see that is where the diesel price has gone all the way up, and now it's down this way. Now all the way this way.
And then we see it's obviously connected to headline inflation.
Headline inflation. There is a strong correlation between the price of diesel and inflation, because diesel is used for many of those products, and we'll get to that in a minute, right? But the reality is that, let us take, for example, a loaf of bread. A loaf of bread is today costing 1,400. This loaf of bread, okay, right? Diesel accounts for 25% of the cost of production for bakeries, because once you start the oven, if you're using NEPA or whatever, if there's a power cut, the dough, you lose everything. So once you want to start the oven, you put on all your generators on, and this drives it. And based on this configuration, you will see that the price of bread by the end of next month will be down to 1,200.
Can we hold you to that, Mr. Rwani?
Theoretically, yes. Now let's go to a tuber of yam.
Yes, really expensive these
Very
days.
expensive, 3,500, the current price. Because the cost of transportation has reduced, if you're buying diesel at 1,000 rather than 1,700, that loaf of bread, that tuber of yam could come down to as low as 2,700 naira. Very, very important, because logistics cost is a major part. In fact, 15% of cost of companies is logistics and distribution. This brings it down. Then the most perishable of them all, which is tomatoes, 35,000 naira current price. If you bring it down, and because the cost of transporting it is faster and the cost of storing it in your storage depot comes down, you can bring it down to 25,000. All of this is based on the fact that if this price is held and is sustainable, the question you ask is that, what is the landed cost of diesel if you're importing it? The landed cost of diesel today is about almost 1,100. Therefore, we have no choice but to buy from our local refinery. That is the modular refineries, the Dangote refineries, and the old refineries that are being resuscitated with the turnaround maintenance. So this is what we're seeing, and it goes on. And the impact, this is where, what is the thing that determines the price of diesel? The global price of oil, which we've seen, it's not 88. The distribution cost of diesel has to be transported itself with the trucks, right? And the tankers. Then the power grid. We've had so many collapses. Normally, at a time when you have so many collapses, the demand for diesel which will increase, right? Because we are transmitting only about 3,000 to 4,000 megawatts. Actually, we are seeing a drop in the price of diesel, which means the supply of diesel is probably far in excess of the aggregate demand.
So it begs this question: is this 1,000 naira by Dangote sustainable? Because you have noted the determinants, and of course we know by now, because at this point, what's going on between Israel and Iran, we see global oil prices going up, and yet we see 1,000 naira in Nigeria. Is that sustainable?
Why? Because Nigeria produces crude. Nigeria refines this crude for now. But the Nigerian economy is vulnerable to exogenous shocks. There's nothing you can do.
And we know that Dangote is importing crude.
Importing in some places, we're also buying domestically from NNPC. We are hoping that NNPC will continue to supply Dangote and the local refineries and the modular refineries. If that happens, you might be able to actually sustain this price. But there are too many things that are going on at the same time. Exchange rate appreciation, which is now stabilizing. When all of these things come together, you will find that, like you said, the impact on the economy, let's take this one after the other. Yeah. GDP growth is going to expand at least to 4.5% because of this, if it is sustained over a year. It adds about 1 to 1.5% to GDP. Inflation rate comes down because of the transportation effect and all of those. If inflation
and
rate,
food
inflation, core inflation, but there's a higher profit margin, because once costs come down for companies, then their margins increase, and then they'll be able to pass this on to consumers or increase their profitability. Of course, lower operating costs. But what is more important that...
And this is interesting, higher salaries, Mr. Rwani. This is very important.
Well, you have to pay. What happens is that when inflation reduces, you are effectively increasing salaries because people are spending less.
Purchasing power increases.
Absolutely. But also we will still have the minimum wage issue, which is hanging in the, which is the big elephant in the room. So if you have an increase in minimum wage at the same time as reducing cost of production, it's a win-win for workers and a win-win for government, because the government gets higher taxes GDP grows, inflation lower, exchange rate stays stable and begins to appreciate.
Yeah, Mr. Ryan, let's deviate a bit. I saw a story on Bloomberg that Nigeria is going to be the 4th largest economy. We used to be the first. Talking about this GDP, that we're going to be the 4th now because of Naira devaluation and all of that. And obviously that is heartbreaking. But what I want to ask is, there's the issue of rebasing. And we've celebrated Naira appreciating. Unfortunately, in the last couple of days, it's been depreciating. Do you see us escaping that?
Yeah, definitely. That figure is for December 2023. In December 2023, the exchange rate had got as high as 1,900. Now that exchange rate has appreciated to about 1,100. Yeah, now, therefore, if you take the position as of December, that could be true. The GDP will come to about almost $284 billion. But if you add about 30% back, because the exchange rate, you have to take 30% of that almost $300 billion. So you come back to where's the 380 to 400 billion. So I wouldn't lose any sleep about the size of the economy.
But what about now that the Naira seems to be depreciating again?
No, it's only depreciated by 1 or 2%. No currency stays static. There's dynamic equilibrium and misalignment of the currency. When things change, the price of oil increases, your diaspora flows increase, you have your Eurobond program coming up, the currency would be more stable rather than volatile. And the reality is that we think that, yes, it's been overbought in terms of it's gone all the way. In fact, some people are doing transactions at below 1,000. 1,100.
Yes, the BBC told us that they were purchasing at 980.
Yeah, but it kind of sounds like artificial, and we think that it will stabilize at current levels and will not depreciate very sharply, at least in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
So tell us, back to 1,000 Naira. How much do you have a company? You purchase. In recent times, since Dangote started the 1,000 Naira thing, have you bought diesel?
I bought diesel, but when I tried to buy diesel, the guy sold it about 1,240. He said he bought diesel before at 1,400. So selling it to me at 1,250 is that he's blending part of the new price with the old price. And I didn't have time to wait because I had no power, so I had to buy it at 1,250. Am I going to buy that at 1,250 next week? No, obviously. As the price comes down and the Dangote supply gets into the market, we begin to bring down the average cost. It's not just the marginal cost. The average cost of the diesel in the tank, which he has bought, right, will now go down. But the question is that when the price of diesel went up, they sold the old stock at the new price.
Exactly, now because they said they wanted to prepare for restocking.
Yeah, now that the price of diesel has come down, they are selling the old stock at the old price and are not selling the new stock at the new price. So, but again...
Is it a Nigerian thing?
Well, no. Consumers, in theory, the consumer is always a king. In reality, in Nigeria, consumer is probably the slave.
Unfortunately. So, apart from diesel, Dangote has promised, I think they're already doing jet fuel.
Yes.
The executive told us yesterday. But, I think the biggest one would be petrol, where we're told that it will be in supply in a couple of weeks.
Yes. But listen, next week they're coming up with dual-purpose kerosene, which is part aviation fuel and part kerosene being used. But also, because the price of kerosene is likely to decline, you've seen the price of cooking gas also begin to drop. So these things have a pull effect, and it pulls all those prices in the same direction. So what are you going to see at the end of the day? Core inflation, which is more structural, will be a bit sticky. Food inflation, which depends on movement of goods, will begin to decline, and the non-food basket begins to decline. However, you know that the price of diesel is very, very important for the base stations of the telcos. So there are at least almost 40 to 50,000 base stations in the country, right? And those base stations run on diesel. They have 3 generators in each base station. They run on diesel. If the price of diesel has come down from 1,700 to 1,000, it means the cost of running those base stations will drop automatically. But there are other costs that go into telco, because there are a lot of things that go into telco, and the discussion of the telco pricing is a discussion for another day, not today.
Obviously. But I mean, sometimes, isn't it scary that it seems a lot is being expected of Dangote? We're talking of diesel, which is the major fuel for industrial activities.
Yes.
We're talking of jet fuel for the aviation sector. And now we're looking forward to petrol. And so everything coming from one source, it sounds scary, isn't it?
No, it's not. Now, the fear of what you call a monopoly, that is not a potent fear. Right? The reality is that there are Port Harcourt, 2 refineries, Kaduna, Warri refineries. There are modular refineries, right? So, and Dangote's refinery being the single train largest in the world, 650,000 barrels a day, is to support the whole of West and Central Africa. So not only will the Dangote refinery be producing for Nigeria, they'll be producing for the rest of West Africa and Central Africa. And so the economies of scale begin to kick in. Nigeria begins to benefit. And you find that, I understand, that the Dangote refinery is going to be listed. So Nigerians will have a chance to buy into it. And when they buy into it, then what we call the democracy of capitalism, where there'll be many shareholders and be getting the dividends. I think that's, but the most important thing is that, will it help to spur growth? Yes. Will it help to create employment? Yes. Is it important that it has a linkage with other areas? It's very important. Therefore, it's not whether it's the Dangote refinery, the refining process for Nigeria, including all the other refineries, will benefit, and the Nigerian people will benefit eventually. I think that's the message, that bringing down the price of diesel, if it is sustainable and it's maintained that way, will help to bring down the cost of doing business in Nigeria and the profitability of companies that are operating all over the country.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Mr. Rwani. I think even the president of LCCI said, I mean, government and people of Nigeria should support Dangote and, people like Air Peace, because these are domestic entrepreneurs feeding.
But even international airlines are going to be refueling in Nigeria because the price of aviation fuel here will be lower than refueling in other locations.
So I can imagine what that could do, especially to our FX liquidity. That will really go a long way.
Well, every drop matters.
Every drop matters, and every note, every dollar matters.
You better believe that.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Chief
you.
Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company. Thank you for your time. All right. So, I mean, I don't think we can talk about this Dangote enough, especially as we count down. That couple of weeks were promised before the petrol. And, I mean, Mr. Rwani has just told us now we can expect kerosene also. So imagine what that would do to the economy. So just before we get back to the Sunrise Daily studio, let's see how the market closed yesterday. Unfortunately, it's still in the red. Talking about the NGX, dropped 0.06%. And yes, we're still below the 100,000. That gives our hearts some warmth. 99,845.91. Equity is still at 56. There was a time we're hoping we'll hit 60, but I guess we'll have to wait very long for those days. And we see activity yesterday was red as expected. Top trades, profit taking is still the theme at the NGX. Access Core, they're having their AGM today, by the way, so you can look out for that news and some of the decisions that they'll be making. GTCO also, UBA, yes, the Fugas dropped yesterday. Profit taking is still very prominent in that sector. So we see GTCO, Access Code, GTCO, and UBA were down. Bringing, of course, the market down below, still sustaining below the 100,000. If we can go to the unlisted market yesterday, there the flip side, the investors running from NGX there. We see that they closed up 2.64%, which is a lot, sustaining the 1,000 level right there, and market cap at over 1 trillion naira, 1.435 trillion naira. The activity chart was mixed, but mostly green yesterday for the NASD. And then the reigning market now seems to be the fixed income markets, with auctions and rates going up. A lot of investors seems to be taking a lot of interest in there. So we see at the FGM bonds yesterday, there were 28 deals worth 20.27 billion naira. For the treasury bills, 16, and then worth 14.14, and OMO from the central bank, just one deal yesterday, but worth 2 billion naira. So we'll have more on the markets, obviously, at 1 p.m. You don't want to miss Business Incorporated. But for now, I think we have to rush back to the Sunrise Daily studio, where they have another conversation waiting for you.